Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Cervena Barva Press reading series. And I'm very excited to have Michael C. Keith and Gregory Wolos read for us tonight. Doing the introductions is Lawrence Kassanich, and he is an award-winning poet, novelist, playwright, essayist, editor, and teacher. And I'm very happy to have him here tonight. So I give you Lawrence.
Thank you, Gloria. So I'm pleased to know both Michael and Greg from a prose writers group that we're in that meets once a month at O'Hara's Pub in Newton. And both very, very good people who I like a lot. Michael's going first. And those of you who know Michael know he's not known for being a man of few words in conversation. But strangely enough, he composes these very short microfiction pieces with, I would say, almost machine-like regularity. It's quite amazing how he cranks them out. He has published no less than 27 story collections. Some of them are full-length stories, but most of them are microfiction. And his stories just keep getting shorter. In Pings, they're 1 to 4. The book you'll read from tonight, they're 1 to 4 lines. Now, prior to writing the short stories, he was best known for groundbreaking books on electronic media and for an acclaimed memoir, The Next Best Place, about his peripatetic childhood with his drifter father. Michael was a professor emeritus at Boston University and is now retired, and you can learn more about him and his work at his website, michaelckeith.com. Michael, take it away.
At least I'm consistent. I did that the last time too. But 4 of us here are now under contract for with the same publisher, as a matter of fact. And that's Pierian Springs Press. That would be Greg, that would be Lawrence, and that would be Krisha, who I've been corresponding with for a while, but this is the first time I get to see her, and that's a real pleasure. So I will be, as Lauren said, reading from my latest book called Pings, New and Selected Nanoscopic Prose Poetry. So I'll be doing these kind of rapid fire in succession. As Lawrence said, most of them are pretty short. So the first one is entitled, It Is the Way She Sees Her World. On page 74 of a Robert Frost biography, Heather notices what appears to be a tiny blood stain. It's shaped like a bird, perhaps a cardinal or a tanager. The color red and objects in nature are 2 things common in the beloved versifier's work, and she thinks the mark is a communique from beyond, put there for her exclusive amusement. I'll jump over to page 12. It's the first time I'm reading directly out of a book. I usually make Xerox copies, so I'll be fumbling around here a little bit. This one is called Sophia's Choice. She had children who caught fire when they had too much sugar. She fell for a man who did not want to become involved with a woman who had children. So she took her son and daughter to a bakery. Leaping over to page 25. I love to see people listening grimace. And this one, if I can find it here, not easy finding pages of it. This is called The Lives of Friends. When I was a kid, I was lonely all the time because we lived on an iceberg, said Marcus, taking a long swig from his pint. The rest of us looked at him quizzically and then drew on our own stouts as well. Later, after Marcus left the pub for the night, we all agreed he'd had an unusual childhood. This is called Message to the Neighbors. We are the old people in the White House across from you. Do you ever wonder who lives here? We suspect not the way you play your loud music and dispose of your empty beer cans. Have you ever noticed the daily arrival of the Meals on Wheels delivery in our driveway? This is called Perceptions. She knows what I'm thinking, but I'm not sure what she is thinking. I have a growing sense this will cause problems in our relationship. So I tell her I think we should break up. And she says she knows. Page 49. This is called Existential Mayonnaise. Excuse me. Every time Ralph chopped up hard-boiled eggs for egg salad, he felt like a murderer, thinking of the chicks who would never be born because of him. Was this a barbaric act, he wondered? Should he stop eating anything that lived or was about to live? He didn't think that was possible. 62. This is called Act of Contrition. At confession, Father Colby asks if he's said his prayers every night. The boy hesitates to admit he's forgotten a few times. The priest intuits this and suggests he come to the child's house at bedtime to make certain he gets on his knees and fulfills his obligation to God. Okay, this is called Pressed into Action. Kyle's book was short, so his publisher added a dozen blank pages at the end to make it look more substantial to potential buyers. When the book did not sell well, the publisher eliminated the pages with print and sold the volume as a notepad. Reviews were strong and sales were brisk. This is called Friend with No Benefits. I checked out his wheelhouse when he wasn't there. It surprised me how empty it was. Barren, you might say. He was so secretive about his wheelhouse, I thought something of real value must be there. You know how disappointing it is when you discover someone you thought had a lot in his wheelhouse really has nothing there. This is time consuming. This is called The Kites of Delhi. Umar contends it is part of Vishnu's plan. The raptors eat the human pestilence in their cities to reduce the number of dead. They are a sacred gift, he says, arms outstretched to the soiled sky. You know what kites are? Kites. It's not the type you fly in a. It's not the type you fly on a kite. It's raptors. Okay. Let's see. This is called Baltimore July Tenement. The heat is oppressive. That's what they say when you drip wet and can't breathe, right? The mattress under me gives off steam, and I lash about trying to locate any movement of air. Then my wife comes and plops down next to me, and the door to hell opens in earnest. Excuse me. This is called Handy. After months of waiting patiently, something was finally sprouting from his severed thumb, where his severed thumb once was. His doctors had told him there were no guarantees when it came to limb regeneration, but they had seemed optimistic. It didn't matter to him that what was growing on his hand was a penis. In fact, the prospects excited him. Okay. This is called old. Old. My skin is like parchment. Draw on me and you'll draw blood. This is called Scorpion in His Coffee. As the sun crept above the date grove outside of Marrakesh, Bertrand lifted the cup to his lips and was taken by the beauty of the desert. This is called Joy Williams. You know Joy Williams? Yeah. After finishing 99 Stories of God, I phoned the author and asked why she gave the book that title, since most of the pieces in it don't even mention God. When I sense she's about to say something, the line goes dead. This is called Cotillion of the Fittest. It wasn't 3 days after the last human died that the cockroaches and rats held a dance. This is called Fear of Fall. The leaves are falling, and soon the abandoned property next door will be exposed, and we will see their ghosts again. 94. It is easier when you're doing this with pieces of paper instead of thumbing through a book. All right, this one is called Fish Eyes. She wondered if it was perverse to feel sexually aroused when her pet stared at her as she lay naked on her bed. A little weird, maybe, but so what, she told herself, thinking she might even buy a second goldfish. Huh. This is called Somewhere. Things are never lost if the radius of your search is the world. This is the wrong page. This is called Little Maurice Was Not a Nice Child. He caught bugs with flypaper and severed their legs, causing their bodies to drop into the bowl of gruel he carefully placed in the path of their descent. Breakfast was his favorite meal. This is called Beat. Beat. I always feel like I have to say this like one of the beats, so maybe I'll do it that way. It's called Beat. Dig it. There's Kerouac tapping out his jazz while Ginsberg howls for love in the next room and Cassidy dances his chemical Roomba on the sidewalk. Here comes Burroughs sniffing out a morphine lunch, and Corso with his Vestal lady scatting for Ferlinghetti in his city of lights. Yeah, man. Kind of bungled that, but it's better when you read it. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm doing okay on time. I think. This is called Who Would Do That? Who would do that? When we traveled as far as the dirt road would take us and found no bed and bath and beyond, we realized we'd been given the wrong directions out of spite. This is called Maybe You Want to Be Maybe You Want to Be Gone. This was actually nominated for a prize. I forget the name of the prize, but Maybe You Want to Be Gone. We all sat around your bed hoping for the best. The doctors were not optimistic you'd make it. We prayed for your return to the conscious world and shed tears fearing you wouldn't. Then, just before your final breath, your expression changed and we realized we were aggravating you. And a couple of more. This is called, I think, A Time and Place for Everything. Meg and Barney entered the Ace Diner between lunch and supper time and were told by the manager that he did not condone eating between meals. Head here. This is called Sacrificing for Art. Excuse me. Sacrificing for art. After I fight with my wife, I can write, but I don't like fighting with my wife. I do like to write, though, and sometimes it's hard to write if I don't fight with my wife. So I fight with my wife so I can write. And least but not last, last piece in the book. It's called Persistent Muse. I'm writing the story about the story. I'm sorry, let me start that again. In writing the story about the story he couldn't write, he'd written the story. Book closed. Now you have to buy the book to see what all that even meant.
Thank you, Michael. Very enjoyable. So now I'd like to introduce Greg Wolos. Greg, like Michael, is incredibly prolific. He has had more than 100 short stories published in journals such as Glimmer Train, Georgia Review, Descant, the Southern Humanities Review, Baltimore Review, Los Angeles Review, and many other publications. Greg's full-length story collections include Women of Consequence, Dear Everyone, The Green Ray and Other Stories, and The Thing About Men. Greg says that most of his stories follow Kafka's assertion that a literary work, quote, should be an ice axe to break up the frozen sea inside us, end quote. Learn more about Greg and his work at GregoryWolos.com.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go.
All right. Well, I assumed that given the fact that Michael's work is Pings and my work is my novel that I'll be reading from is Tings, I assumed that this was Cervena Barva's Ing Night. So as a consequence of that, I actually prepared an introduction, a little musical introduction. Perhaps some of you are familiar with the Roach sisters, not the Roach brothers who sell you food. These people used to sell you music. So here's the song I'm going to begin with today. Can you hear it? Can you hear it all? I don't know. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but for some reason the music kept going in and out.
Well,
No,
that's
we can
weird.
hear them. We can hear the music if you leave the phone next to the computer in one position close.
Ah, thank you. We'll try it again. No, that. No, that. No, wrong song. All right, so we're not going to do that. What we're going to do instead is I'm going to tell you about my novel Tings first before I read the passage. The epigraph explains the title. The epigraph, if you imagine Bela Lugosi in a early 1930 movie called The Island of Lost Souls, the movie itself is a retelling of the Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. And it seems that Dr. Moreau, played by Charles Lawton in the movie, he thought it would be a great scientific experiment to do vivisections on all sorts of animals and try to make them into human beings, transform them into human beings. They used to go to the House of Pain where he would perform his operations on these creatures, and he made slaves out of them. It's a nice occupation. The animals got mad, or the creatures got mad. They didn't like it. And in fact, they rebelled. And the title comes from a speech as all the animals gather around, all the creatures gather around Dr. Moreau after they chase him down. And Bela Lugosi, his face full of fur, not slick like Dracula, but a face full of fur. He says, "We are not men. We are things. We are not beasts. We are things. You made us things." And that made me think. That made me think of the dangers of dead white male creativity. And my novel essentially explores several different layers of dead white male creativity, collateral damage. Who suffers? Who doesn't? What are the consequences of this down the road? There are monster movies I invented in the book. There are real books by dead white male authors that are cited through the passages, and you'll hear some of them. Lawrence, thank you for the introduction. Two authors that you have strong opinions about are in this passage. And too bad about the Ingfest. You would have liked it. So I'm going to read a passage. It's a post-coital scene. The lovers are, well, the female is trying to read the tattoos on the chest of her lover. And the difficult part of this is the lover has just been released, has been released from prison for a while because he was a tattoo artist, and he tattooed the eyelids of this woman's daughter. And she didn't like it. She was underage, but he didn't know it at the time. And then she accused him of other things, the daughter, et cetera, et cetera. But somehow they're in bed together, they're lovers. And I'm going to read this passage. It's in part 2 of the novel, where we're now several layers of collateral damage by dead white male creativity down the road. So here we go. It's important to listen to the opening. It's part 2, chapter 9, Dead White Male Body. Oh, by the way, there are 2 perspectives in this scene. There's the consciousness of the tattoo artist, and then the consciousness of the girl's mother comes in a little later. They overlap. Okay. Laser lay in bed with the mother of the girl he'd served nearly a year in prison for violating. All he'd done was tattoo the kid's eyelids per her request, though he'd been accused of more. After sentencing, he'd become a registered sex offender for, quote, lewd or lascivious acts with a child under the age of 18, end quote. He'd been told she was 18, nearly 18. The girl's mother stared at the tattoos on his chest. What's this hand? She had eyes like her daughter's, but with long lashes that seemed fake. Her kid, he'd found out the hard way, had alopecia and hadn't any lashes at all. It's Mr. Antolini's. Her eyes bucked to his. Whose? Antolini's, from a book. He's a guy who pats a confused boy on the head. That's hair under the fingers. Are they related? I think I read it. A memoir? They're made-up characters. It's fiction. The guy just cares about the kid, or whatever. Her eyes dropped back to the spot over his collarbone. Sometimes it was hard to see your own tattoos. It would not have been cool to tell her that her daughter inherited her eyes. Laser was not one for lingering looks. One early spring, years ago when he was a teen, he'd driven to the beach, and at the shore he'd come upon a group of people, Hispanic, facing the water, some knee-deep in the surf, some standing on the sand. Someone named Poppy had slipped beneath the black waves. There had been shouts of Poppy through cupped hands at a surface that was blank all the way out until it met the sky. Laser had stripped to his shorts and waded in up to his belly before the bone-numbing chill struck him, and he remembered that he was a weak swimmer. The undertow had pulled at his hips and thighs like a pair of giant hands. Shaking his head, he'd retreated to the packed sand, where he found himself facing a young woman. The wind blew her dark hair straight at him, as though he lay on his back and she bent over him. Through her hair, he could see her eyes, and they'd been full and empty at the same time. He'd run back to his car, shouting without looking back that he was going to get help, and he'd driven to a diner 5 miles down the highway. All he did was tell a waitress that she needed to call in an emergency, that someone was drowning. People tried to hold your gaze, either to look for your wounds or to show you theirs, Laser knew. The girl's mother, reading his chest now, couldn't see the setting sun inked across his back. It had wriggling beams made up of words, one of which was Poppy. You've got a thing for hands. What about these? Dana asked. Which? These right here, the clasped ones. Her lips and the tip of her tongue marked a spot just below his nipple, and her hair bunched under his chin, black curls so cool they felt wet, like kelp, and smelled of expensive treatments. If Laser hadn't been propped up on his elbows, he might have run his fingers through those curls. From another book, he said. 2 guys on the deck of a whaling ship are kneading a tub full of spermaceti, smooth, soft stuff from a dead whale. They used to make perfume out of it. The guys were squeezing lumps out, and it felt so good they took each other's hand. Tastes fishy, Dana smacked her lips. I know, a whale isn't a fish. She sat back on her heels and scanned Laser's body. Whales are a danger. She wore only his denim shirt, unbuttoned. Her flesh, all he could see, was white and clean. And it's a little gay, too. Brotherhood, he said. The brotherhood of man. What are you, a test all over? Who's this? She squinted close to read the name printed across his belly. SVI? How do you even say it? Did you or whoever did it spell it wrong? I did it. It's Svidrigailov, a character. He's Russian. He doubted if Dana could tell this was the newest of his tattoos, that he had done it in prison with a needle and homemade ink. He wouldn't tell her that her daughter had inspired it. That sounds familiar, kind of ominous, but Russian names all sound the same to me. Svidrigailov, Svidrigailov, really, holding hands, patting heads? Laser thought the girl's mother should be smarter, or at least better educated. She was a high school principal, after all. Most of what she'd asked about on his chest was from books he'd read in high school, the rest on his own afterward. His body was kind of a test, though, and he couldn't really say that she'd failed it, because none of the women he'd been with had offered more than a general cool, or I like that one, or those scare me about his inkings. Just Willie Freeze, his first and only cellmate, had picked up the references. And in a heartbeat, Catcher in the Rye, he'd said about the patting hand, and Moby Dick about the clasped ones, after Laser had given him the hint about the spermaceti squeezing. He watched Laser complete Svidrigailov across his own stomach. You're lucky you're borderline, friend. If that girl you're in here for was as young as the girl that pimp Svidrigailov turned into a hooker in his dream, you'd be screwed. And I don't mean screwed, I mean dead. Child molesters here, friend, they're screwed dead. This shit you've got inked all over you, you already have a dead white male body. Laser had been finishing the second V. There was something satisfying about the jab of the pen, the blue-black ink, something where there'd been nothing on his belly. Damn, Willie Freeze wagged his head. Dostoevsky, he should have been locked up just for imagining the crimes in his book. Then he got excited. Hey, friend, you got to ink my eyeballs. It can be done. I've heard about it, but never seen it. But I can imagine what it would look like. Yes, people would shiver whenever they saw me. I'd be king of the world. When people can't look you in the eye, they'll believe whatever you tell them to hide the fact that they're afraid. Never did eyes, but I've seen it. You don't really want that. You have to tattoo my eyes, friend. Willie's voice and glare had been iron hard. The mother of the girl he tattooed was playing with Laser's dick. It wasn't stiffening, but neither of them was ready for more sex yet. She was examining it the way she'd looked at his body art, like it was a curiosity, something that he had that she didn't. Laser had tattooed Willie Freeze's eyes, turning the whites blue-black, and his cellmate had indeed been transformed into one fearsome motherfucker. He looked like midnight had risen within him and would never leave. Willie had laughed like a demon when he'd seen himself in the mirror. Then, within an hour, he'd gotten knifed in the yard during a fight he'd started, and Laser had never seen or heard of him again. There was also a Willie in the sunset on Laser's back. Dana hated how she sounded, like a coquette, like a little idiot. And here she was, 40, an educator, a professional, 42. She taught literature, directed plays, and she had a finger on the pulse of what was politically correct and what wasn't. In general, she'd shown appropriate scorn for the influence of dead white males. Scorn was different from ignorance. But what did people sound like when they were having affairs? She had no script, but she was deeply, daringly involved in a scene with this man whose body was a museum, a library of prompts. There was something about the strangely spelled name on his belly that made her uneasy. She'd heard it before, but arousal and insecurity clouded her memory. If it's a Russian name, why didn't you use the Russian alphabet? She was not a skilled teaser. Did everything she said have to come out sounding stupid or inappropriate? Like a bubble urging its way up through hot mud, a memory connected to the Russian name took shape. Years back, a man on stage, an old song about a frog. But then Laser spoke and the bubble popped. I've inked in Cyrillic, but I don't read Russian. They'd met when she'd rushed to his tattoo parlor, furious and frantic, insisting that Laser remove the stars of David he'd tattooed on her daughter's eyelids. Thrusting the branded girl in front of her, she'd screamed at the thick man in the tattooing chair. He was reading a newspaper under his work lamp. We're going to shut you down, she'd been hoarse, intending to be as dangerous as she tried to appear. That morning, Dana had found her daughter dressed and napping on top of her covers as usual. The teen habitually rose at dawn to shave herself smooth from head to toe. The hair that alopecia didn't erase surfaced overnight in unsightly patches. Dana had started shaving the child in preschool, but since the onset of puberty, the girl had been doing it herself. night and morning, doubling up. With adolescence, her daughter had spurned the blonde wig she'd worn since kindergarten in favor of a hot pink page boy. The new wig complemented a rich fantasy life that excluded Dana. But it had been a relief to roll her eyes at the excesses of a daughter who, if not exactly a normal teenager, at least overlapped with Dana's idea of one. Up, sleepyhead, time for school, Dana had called. Missed you last night. There'd been a late PTA meeting. Then she'd seen the stars, which the girl had fluttered drowsily at first, then defiantly as she realized why her mother was staring. Tattoos, she said, and Dana had shrieked. She looked up the address and raced with her daughter through the commuter-clogged downtown streets to lasers, tattoos, and piercings. The large man with the ring through his nose and the ponytail and the ink-stained arm lowered his paper, removed his glasses, and nodded down at them with a frowning grin, as if he'd expected them. The minute he agreed to tattooed stars on the eyelids of the whip of a girl with the crazy pink wig and audacious drawn-on brows, Laser had known there'd be trouble. But the kid had been right about the stars. She needed them. He tried to explain to the frenzied mother that he couldn't really help. It's a coincidence that my name is Laser. I don't do laser removal. I don't have the equipment. There are clinics that do that. Try Tadoff. It's a chain. There's one in the mall near you. That's where I'll stop. Something about the passage I just read. It's a short story as well. It's a version of a short story, which is in one of my collections. The novel itself the idea for the novel itself actually started off in 1992 when I wrote a story about a guy who wanted to do a remake of Son of Kong, the movie Son of Kong. It's called Son of Kong, How Do You Do? I wrote that story, and it was actually published in one of the first online journals, Postmodern Culture, out of Johns Hopkins. But I always thought about it, and in 2010, I wrote a new version, updated, changed around completely. Really liked it. It won a prize, actually. It went out of the University of Central Florida. I got some bucks, but the story still stuck with me, and I was really involved with the characters. So I started writing stories. As I write stories all the time, but every other story would be about those same characters, and they'd either precede what was in that story, or they'd come after that story. And eventually I had 16 other published stories that were all related to the central story. And I added a few more chapters. I moved things around, and that eventually became this Tings monster of mine. So essentially a 30-something year venture to get to Tings.
Wow.
Well,
Interesting.
Thank you very much, Gregory. And Michael, could you please share where your book can be bought besides Amazon, the presses, Pierian Springs and Silver Bow? Could you
Bow
give
Publishing.
information or from you?
Silver Bow Publishing. It's actually out of Canada. And that's, I think, what I'll say about that. Yeah. And the story is actually in the chapter that I read. That story, a version of that story, is in the Cervena Barva of The Thing About Men, that collection.
okay.
And Pings can be purchased at about every cyber bookstore on planet Earth. The publisher has extraordinary distribution, because I was getting I was seeing cyber bookstores in Malaysia and Vostok, and so it's not hard to come by, but it is published by Pierian Spriggs, as is Krisha's book, Dirge. Highly recommend you look into that book as well. And then later this year, we'll see Greg and Lawrence's books peppering the planet Earth with their titles.
And
Thank you, Michael. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something, Greg?
I was going to try again. Nothing. All right. Come on,
What's the
man.
matter with that ting?
Oh, here we go.
No?
Wait.
We lost it.
Nothing?
Yeah, we heard it for a minute.
I need better
Too
equipment.
bad.
I
need
tried
better
for your
equipment.
sound editor.
The title of the song is Ing. You should know.
Ting.
And there's a wonderful course. You should look it up.
Sounds good. And Lawrence, thank you also tonight for introducing. And again, Michael and Greg, thanks so much. And that'll be it for tonight. And
And
thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially toughing it out, Gloria. Very good.
And
Thank
Marcus,
you.
you're an hour late.
You can see the recording. I'll put it
That's
up tomorrow. Okay. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Thank
everybody.
you.